Hey there. Um, it's Corey. This is the Mind of a Skeptical Leftist, the 300 subscriber, I guess, live stream. Uh, so thanks for watching if you are, and if you watch it later, that's great. I'm I just came off of working for like 12 hours, so I'm not fully ready to do the live stream thing, but I said I would do it, so I'm doing it. um, so this is available on Facebook, YouTube, and on Twitch for those who might want to watch wherever you want to watch. If you have any questions, feel free to post them in the comments. I've got I'll try to answer whatever questions as good as I can. I'm going to probably stay on for about an hour. Uh, I've got the kids are upstairs. We just went and got them from daycare. So there might be some loud banging from the children's, but that's all right. I try to make do. So I guess with all that out of the way, um, one of the things that Pam, my partner, said that I should talk about is uh, how I kind of got to my perspective from where I was, because I was at one time a uh, a pretty hardcore conservative. So uh, a lot of people a lot of people might actually know this story already because they were involved in it, or I've told it on a podcast before. But in I think it was 2000 and I want to say 2009, I I was still conservative and I had been for a few years before that. So I was one of these conservatives that's pretty hardcore, talks about, I was a climate change denier, and uh, I listened to John Gormley, which for anyone who might not know, John Gormley is like the Saskatchewan version of Rush Limbaugh. Very low rent, very racist, very bigoted, and wrong about pretty much everything. And I used to listen to John Gormley regularly because it was on we listened to news talk radio in the work truck. And so I got a lot of opinions from that show. And then I started talking, and then it wasn't long after, like at some point in there, 2008, 2009, Facebook started to exist in my life. So then when Facebook started to exist, I started reconnecting with friends that I had kind of lost touch with. And that includes my friend Mike. And so we started arguing about climate change. And in an effort to prove him wrong and prove myself right, I went to try and find some credible sources to disprove uh, the science of climate change. And it turns out that the science of climate change is pretty sound. It's pretty good science. Hi, some random geek. Thanks for tuning in. I'm just talking about how I lost an argument and had to change my mind about climate change because I was a climate change denier, and how that started me down this rolling down this hill of learning that I was wrong about everything that I had thought I was right about previously. Um, it's an uncomfortable feeling that over the years I've had to get really used to. I never liked being wrong. I know nobody really likes being wrong, but I've gotten quite used to finding out that I was making incorrect assumptions or going off of what I had just heard. Yes, changing your mind is possible. Uh, Apparently just not for everyone all the time. Yeah, it's a weird sensation that being wrong. I didn't enjoy it, so I had no choice but to change my mind. It was that or uh, do the cognitive dissonance thing and deny that I was wrong. But sometimes that can be pretty tough when you're encountering hard facts. So I guess when I think about like learning I was wrong about climate change, I'll put that up on the screen. Oh yes, asking others to change his mind. Yeah, uh, except the problem with Steven, of course, is that he's not actually willing to change his mind. He's just there to try to own people, right? Like he wants to do that fake debate thing where he just asks a bunch of questions without ever actually accepting the answers. So yeah, Steven Crowder, that's a real character. Um, I still find myself intrigued by guys like Steven Crowder or like those right wing kind of shitheads, like even Gavin McInnes, like or the rebel media guys or Alex Jones. Like they're all kind of I find them fascinating in a weird way, even though they're infuriating and also they're like extremely problematic and like are doing real harm to society and the world. Um, but well, for me, I would say that debates are about winning, but education isn't, and that's why I don't do debates. So I guess where was I? I was kind of thinking about. I learned that I was wrong about climate change, and as a result, then I had to kind of start learning like more things that I was wrong about. For a long time, I maintained quote unquote agnosticism because I didn't think that uh, there could be any kind of I didn't think atheism was the right position. But as I learned more, again, I adopted atheist as my kind of viewpoint on the question of God or religious subjects. Uh, and actually, in a good way, the finding out I was wrong on climate change led me into skepticism in general, which really helped me to examine my own biases and my own flaws in thinking. And I learned a lot about logical fallacies, the way one does when you're learning about skepticism. But logical fallacies, I don't think are as useful as they maybe could used to be. But oh, it's a I I have a friend that finds War Corp 666 a fascinating person, even though he is wrong about a lot of things. Oh, Lord of Patriarchy. Okay, well, that's an interesting name. Yeah, I think I've watched a couple War Corp 666's videos back when I think it was Kevin Logan was still doing the Manosphere series. Not somebody I would consider like particularly useful in as far as discourse, but perhaps fascinating. I can see why like people find them fascinating. So I guess I wanted to talk about anarchism a little bit. Like some random geek. I know you're an anarchist. I know that maybe some of the other people that watch this are also anarchists, and you can kind of see like I've got this "all states are bad" up on the wall. This is I think this is kind of my response to a lot of leftists who try to be apologists for uh, like your uh, kind of for your China or your Stalinist Russia type things. Like I I want to I want to always make sure that I'm being as accurate as possible on things. So like when I'm talking to my friend Justin about books from the Russian Revolution, like I don't know that much about it. So I'm often like learning about those things, but still I often have questions because after the Russian Revolution, like even Lenin's USSR, they cracked down on like they killed a bunch of anarchists. If my history is correct, if I'm remembering this correctly, and like so, in my opinion, all states are bad. So I don't know if that's. I mean, obviously, not everybody's going to share that perspective, but I think it's I think it's worth saying often enough because all states, even like all the states that currently exist, participate in some level of human rights abuses. I can't, I don't think that there are any examples um, that don't. I suppose Rojava, uh, there might be something there. There might be small regions that don't call themselves states that aren't currently participating in human rights abuses, but all all top down hierarchies are bad. I think so. I think that's fair. Um, I think there's some worth in like making sure we're you know recognizing the nuance of a leader who is serving the people versus a leader or a politician who places themselves above the people. But that also implies a system that doesn't allow someone to hold power uh, for any length of time, like, uh, like immediately recallable or extremely short term limits. Yes, the Zapatistas in Mexico operate without a state as well. Yeah, I actually don't know that much about the Zapatistas, but I have heard that, and that sounds great to me. Any stateless uh, group in a region is, I think, great. But I know, again, like I've got this. Which side is it on? This poster. No one is free until all are free. That's a pretty common anarchist saying. Uh, we don't really believe that we can be free in any sense as long as people are in prisons or people who have to starve or work for a dictator in order to avoid starvation. Um, the Zapatistas sell coffee that Alex Jones is a founder. Okay. I don't even know what to say about that. I'm sure I'm perhaps Alex Jones actually has decent taste in coffee. Maybe does he realize they're the Zapatistas that are selling it? I can hear my kids banging. So I guess yeah, if I had the day to prepare, then I would probably be a little bit more on the ball here. But I I woke up this morning with the intent to work until around noon, and then I would have been at home and I would have been able to come up with some topics, perhaps, and maybe even do a little bit of editing on the more recent on the last read reviews episode of the year. But my dad had some tooth pain, so then I had to go and go work for the whole day. Oh, here we go. He said, even though they are communists that make there are communists that make it, they sure do make good coffee. Oh, well. Alex Jones. Good tasting coffee, I guess. Made by communists. So yeah, I'm oh yes, that is a Rise Against poster on the wall as well. Rise Against, Rage Against the Machine. This is my aesthetic. Yeah, it's I know I'm still listening to Rise Against, like Siren Song of the Counterculture. It came out like I don't know, a long ass time ago, like probably 15 years or something now. And I still listen to that regularly. When I was doing Uber, I would get people come in the car and they would recognize the songs because they were actually popular for a while. And I think I think they're subversive but yet appealing to a mainstream audience, so I could play subversive music and without having people get mad. Which is something I didn't really get away with Rage Against the Machine or even Kitty, you're knocking down my lights. Or even I used to play Flowbots. I don't know if anybody listens to Flowbots. My cat's being a jerk. Do you know of any other anarchist? I'll put this up on the screen. Any other anarchist or strictly leftist musicians? Uh, oh, I know there's a band called The Coup. They got a song that's The Guillotine. We got the guillotine. I really like that. No, I don't know if there's. Yeah, Flowbots is really good stuff. Like it's rap, but also they have like a lot of instruments in the background that I think because I think they have a big band as well. They're not a rap group that samples so much as they are a group that has instruments played. So yeah, they did the song. I think Handlebars is what the song was. Dead Kennedys. They have a song called "Lynch the Landlord." Nice. Yeah, Dead Kennedys is something that I really enjoyed when I was a teenager. I got a couple albums from them from like my social studies teacher, which now, if you did that now, like conservatives would have a fit if a teacher gave Dead Kennedys albums to a student. I'm kind of surprised that at the time my dad didn't have a fit. Yeah, Handlebars by the Flowbots. That's they I I thought that song was actually it some of its lyrics were quite subversive as well, but then they've got like a bunch of songs on that same album that are talking about the other America and a war against your mind and like uh they're I think a very underrated group. Well, that's 20 minutes. I don't know. Yes, Paul Ryan, the understander of things. Yeah. Yeah, it's funny, a lot of conservatives, they think they like Rage Against the Machine right up until they know what they're talking about, and then they get really pissed off. I'm sure at this point that's been discussed like crazy all over the left. But I remember like Paul Ryan, he said that he liked Rage Against the Machine, and Tom Morello like came out as said, "Hey, stop listening to our music. You are the machine. You're exactly who we're against." Yeah. So I don't know what else. Want to sound smart and interesting, but I just worked all fucking day, so I got nothing. My partner Pam, she oh how far are you in the audiobook of Dawn of Everything? I think I'm about a third of the way in. I thought I was halfway last week, but when I looked there the other day, I'm more like a third. Uh, I got distracted because my podcast playlist that I listen to, it's over 300 episodes long right now, and also I want to listen to. Re-listening to the audiobooks for the Wheel of Time series to kind of go along with the TV show. Uh, which I probably shouldn't do because it makes me mad at the TV show for not having as much detail as I would like. But yeah, Dawn of Everything is pretty amazing. Yeah, chapter 5, I don't know if I'm that far. But chapter 2 really kicked me in the head, I guess. Like some of the ways in which indigenous uh, people like basically refuted all of colonialism and capitalism at the time. Like it wasn't even like it had to be done later. Like they encountered this bad way of thinking that was coming in, and 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 as soon as they learned French, they could argue against the French people uh, better than than the colonizers could argue for their position. And I mean, I talk about it. I've talked about it probably on every single podcast that I do. But like that scene where the indigenous band Candy Runk goes to France and starts like questioning, like, what the hell are you? What are you French people doing here? Why do you compete against each other? Why are you so primitive? In our society, we take care of our neighbors. We take care of our community. Yes, that's right. Yeah, this is exactly right. The indigenous folks called the French the real savages because of the way they lived, because they fight with each other or fought with each other. I mean, it's the same society, it's the same culture we live in now, right? So it's capitalism. Yeah, since the French let the poor and the homeless just die. Yeah, it's absurd. It I always think like, what even is the point of a society if we're not taking care of each other? Like, why wouldn't we just all be a bunch of random people in the woods doing our own thing? The whole point of our society is to cooperate and build things, and not to let someone dominate us. But I guess like that's it seems so obvious to me, but and damn the USA for ramping it up. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and imperialism, right? Like the uh the spreading of capitalism and the exploitation of resources and people all over the world. It's the US really has a strong handle on that as a practice. So it's yeah, yeah. I don't know. It's not good. One of the things, actually, I guess I was thinking of earlier today. I'm kind of jumping all over the place here. Sorry. Uh, but I was trying to think of like how to explain toxic masculinity to guys that deny that it's a thing because they think toxic masculinity and masculinity are the same, or what they think is that feminists and uh, those of us who support feminism uh, are equating masculinity and toxic masculinity. So I was trying to think of like what the best way to explain it is. And as far as I can come up with, the best way to explain toxic masculinity is to say that it's that insecure voice that men seem to have that makes them want to prove how tough they are, and how and to try and dominate others. I think that if it wasn't for much of our learning about how like that kind of domination and that fear, that insecurity, that fear of being judged as less than masculine, uh, I think that domination wouldn't be as prevalent. Um, it's like when you hear about people. Oh yeah, yeah, they forget how adjectives work. Yeah, yeah. No one calls me chicken. Yeah, it's very much like it's the same. It's like I can think of a million examples of exactly the kind of behavior that it brings out. Like it's the guys that like when you feel the urge to brag about how many partners you've slept with, or although the guys who are exemplifying toxic masculinity do not phrase it that way, right? Um, and it's always about showing how tough you are and one upping the other people around you, and like it's it's very much not every aspect of masculinity. Like the idea of protecting those you care about could be I mean it's not a masculine trait. That's the part of the problem, I guess, is that a lot of the positive traits of masculinity, they don't have to be associated with masculinity. They can be traits that are associated with any gender identity. So I don't know. A lot of stuff, it's tied up in like capitalism too, right? Like being the breadwinner uh, is is part of it, right? Like the idea that I'm the one who has to provide for my family. Well, but our society doesn't actually allow for that anymore. So then we have to find other ways to compensate. So this feels weird. I'm just riffing. I'm just like talking to myself. Well, I'm talking with some random geek and whoever the other two listeners or watch viewers are. But it feels like I'm in a room surrounded by lights talking to myself, which I usually do with a script because I don't riff very good. Uh, okay, well, there's a good question. How did you become an anarchist? Um, I'm gonna credit the show Sons of Anarchy for opening my eyes to the possibility. Uh, there's a scene, and I think it's even in season one, where there was an Emma Goldman quote spray painted on a wall, and I thought like that's absolutely perfect. Like it embodies exactly the way I view things. And so I started looking up Emma Goldman, and as I started looking up her writings and reading what she was saying, uh, I started being like, okay, so I think I'm an anarchist. But then I encountered like a lot of that kind of objectivist type stuff, or like Ayn Randian, free market, libertarian, voluntarism, or whatever the fuck they ANCAPs call their nonsense. So for a little while, I was kind of into that. Yeah, Emma Goldman is amazing. But Ayn Rand is the opposite. So but at the same time that I discovered Emma Goldman and started examining anarchism, I was in that stage where I was almost a centrist, really, because I was very skeptical, and excuse me. Yeah, I was searching for anarchist and found and crap stuff. Exactly. That's how actually I was introduced to Stefan Molyneux back before he was like a rabid white supremacist who got booted off all the sites. Um, I encountered his philosophy because he presents himself as an anarchist philosopher or presented himself that way on YouTube. And I heard him on Joe Rogan's podcast, because at one time I listened to the Joe Rogan show, and yeah, and it led me down the wrong path of anarchism. I'm glad that I learned more. Oh, hey, Utah Outcast, good to see you. Yeah, so uh, Stefan Molyneux is not an anarchist as far as I'm concerned. He can maybe claim the title of right-wing libertarian. Um, but that's the kind of shit that Joe Rogan was sending me to back in whatever year it was, 2013, I think, back when I first started just looking up anarchism, and back when I first started the Brainstorm podcast, actually, I think. It might have been right before that. The Joe Rogan. Ugh. Oh yeah, I think Stefan Molyneux might be a monarchist. Yeah. Yeah. He's he's wrong anyway. And yes, Joe Rogan, he's if of all the people who spread bad information to susceptible minds, I think he's one of the probably the worst. Um, his audience is way too big. Like when I was driving for Uber in 2019, I would get people in my car and they would say, "Well, what do you do for fun?" And I would talk about my podcast. And one of the first things they'd always say is, "Well, do you listen to Joe Rogan?" Either shade of pain. Yeah, it's still wrong. Yeah. Yeah. He could call himself, Stefan Molyneux can call himself a monarchist or an anarchist or whatever the hell he wants, no matter what. His viewpoint is incorrect. But yeah, so I once had a conversation in my car with a passenger about Joe Rogan, and I mean, I'm not I'm not averse to disagreeing with somebody just because they're my customer. so so I would so he asked me, "Do you listen to Joe Rogan?" And I said, "No, I don't like Joe Rogan." Uh, and he started going on about how he has how he has people from both sides of the political spectrum on, and that's what this guy liked about uh, Joe. And I said, "Well, you know, I can't listen to anybody who's going to have Alex Jones on." And instead, so he came back, "Yeah, well, he had Adam from Adam Ruins Everything on it." And I love Adam. I mean, he's a liberal, I think, but he's he's still good. He's a good for information. And but this passenger was talking about how Joe Rogan pushed back on Adam's uh SJW nonsense, and I it was the end of the ride. So then I had to end the conversation there. But it's one of those things, like, how far do you push the conversation with the customer who could give you a 1-star rating just to just to argue that Joe Rogan is bad and Adam from Adam Ruins Everything is good. I don't know. I don't think that guy tipped either, now that I think about it. But I'm definitely not a fan of like Joe Rogan now. So yeah, I that's fair. I working where I work and doing stuff like that I do, I have I bite my tongue a lot. Oh yeah. Yeah. Yeah, Alex Jones is very heavy into the religious supremacy for sure. And yes, once SJWs is used, well, once somebody is says like, because I'll call myself an SJW. In fact, my shirt says uh, intersectional SJW metalhead on it. There it is. so, so in a positive way, I'm okay with it. But yeah, if somebody's being anti SJW, it just means they're anti social justice to me. So, and often it also means they don't actually know what the left is, because they often think that, like, performative wokeism or performative identity politics, like from democratic politicians, are SJWs, right? Like they like to say they're on the left. Like if a rightist is saying, or a Republican or a conservative is saying that someone is on the left just because they advocate for anti-racism, that's not necessarily true. It depends on their actions too, right? As we say, like, if somebody's just if when the Democrats were wearing kente cloths and kneeling uh, for during the Black Lives Matter protests in last year, I mean, that seems pretty performative, but I wouldn't call them SJWs or on the left. Yes, exactly. Joe Rogan talks to the left. He had Adam Ruins Everything on. What does the left mean to you? Yeah, well, that's the question, isn't it? I know I've gotten into some kind of debates with uh very, very progressive people who aren't anti-capitalist about what the left means. Um, and I try to have a pretty open mind to what the left is. I feel like, at least, if not anti-capitalism has to be part of it, I feel like a strong criticism of capitalism has to be part of it. Yeah, the Democrats are they're very proud to say they're not the anti-police party. Uh, even while some members of the Democratic Party are actually talking about defund police stuff, uh, it's always the people who don't have the clout within the party, so they can't do anything about it. But who the Democrats, that's a whole other that's a whole problem right there. The I'm I don't know. It's hard for me because I want to be understanding of perspectives of people that well, I find it fascinating that with the rise of humanism, some folks have a hard limit when it comes to institutions like the police, capitalism, etc. Well, yeah, because institutions are they consider them a staple of society, of a functioning, stable society, right? It's like if you if you say defund the police, they think that the world's going to descend into anarchy, which is another way of like, to me, you don't descend into anarchy. You strive for anarchy. You build towards anarchy because that's the world that's the most free for the most people. But yeah, institutions are people are really stuck with like on holding on to them and without any kind of yes, what else will do that role? Yeah. I want a world with a government. I don't want mob rule. Yeah, well, that is a thing that many people say, isn't it? Like they really believe that without without some coercive element, like you say, Utah outcasts, like you don't need it. Yeah, without some coercive element, without the police, they really believe that we're just going to descend into utter chaos and it will be. And I've encountered this on, I know Twitter is the bad place for an example, probably, but I've encountered this argument on Twitter a lot where people will say, like, then it's just survival of the fittest. It's just the strong dominating the weak. But that's absolutely not what anarchy is. And, and no, I don't think there's any anarchist right now that speaks about like turning off the government tomorrow and then overnight we will have a perfect anarchist society. like like none of us believes that you could just shut everything down and then let things fall where they may. We want to work towards this. We want to build dual power. We want to build mutual aid networks. We want to build a society that is less reliant on capital and less reliant on the state. In a sense, incrementalism, yes. In a sense, because incrementalism is often like also associated with just reforming the current system, but for anarchists, like for myself at least, often we mean like, yeah, like build syndicalism, like building those structures alongside the existing structures so that when we tear down those existing structures, we can replace them with something better. And I mean, obviously that's a lot of work and it takes a lot of like education and uh, a lot of different viewpoints. A lot of work is kind of the key here. In one of my upcoming episodes, I had a discussion with Anarch, who does some really amazing informational videos on anarchism and how the anarchist revolution will look, rather than just like, uh, you know, rather than just a vanguard party, like the way that Leninists like to think of things, or I would be happy if we could just grab the conservative workers and convince them that their unions are necessary. Yes. Yes. I mean, that's a big step. It's just unionizing workplaces. The more worker control we have in the hands of, uh, the more worker control we have, the better we are. I have a liberal friend that is a bit of an anti-anarchist because he doesn't want social rule because that seems like mob rule. Would you debunk a statement like that? Um, Well, I don't think it's mob rule because and I guess there's some debate in anarchist circles about this, but you could institute a type of uh, constitution within your anarchist society, and then you can't ever take away rights. Like you can assign universal rights to everyone, and then you can set it up so that you can never take them away without like a 99% uh, amendment or something like. But you would have to be very careful about the way that you do that, obviously, because you don't want it to get abused in any way. You don't want to end up with a mob rule, like you say. But that's also why direct democracy is vital. Why increased participation is important. Important. You can't really. It's not mob rule if it's 51%, right? Like that's not enough to sway decisions in a properly set up society where right now, I mean, 51% of the populace can decide who is in charge of the country. Um, Although, again, it's not even 51% of the populace because you don't, in modern representative democracies, we don't have significant enough participation to say that we have 51% of the people even voting on some things. So I don't know. I mean, it varies, obviously. Like, I think there's some places, yeah, yeah, technology definitely is a problem compared to the very slow pace of change within governance. And that's for every every representative democracy. There's none that have it exactly right. And I think part of the problem too is that like even when we look at like the Nordic models of how they run their countries with a good social safety net, like a lot of the time, what gets left out of those conversations is the exploitative nature of their industry. The USA is not a democracy. We don't have full suffrage. Yeah, well, that's right. Since felons can't vote, exactly. Yeah, in Canada, uh now I could be mistaken on this, but I'm pretty sure that people in Canada who have been to prison can vote. It's not a thing that you have to earn back. And as far as I know, they even have voting in prisons. So in it might I might be wrong about that second part though. The Senate and the electoral. Yeah, actually, the US system seems almost like the worst way to do it. Um, Not to beat up on the US because again, Canada is we have first past the post, which is a terrible way to run elections. Uh, we don't have any kind of proportional representation, even if you want a proper representative democracy. Like it's just these countries, they're set up, and we know this, they're set up to keep the people with power and money on top of the rest of us. And it doesn't seem to matter that it's not good for even the outcomes they think they want because productivity, while it has gone up over the last however many decades, it it's not good to have a populace that is as disenfranchised as as we are in Canada and the US. Yeah, that's right. Trudeau promised yeah, proportional representation and then backtracked because he would lose power. Uh you can't change the system if you're on top of it, or else you run the risk of losing that power, right? And this last election just showed, there's not a lot of will to change who's in control of the country right now. So it's, I don't know. It's a little frustrating. I mean, I would have preferred to see more NDP wins in the last election, but we didn't really get much of that. Basically, not much change this last go. But yeah, I feel like I'm jumping all over the place. I'm down to I'm up to 50 minutes. There's actually like 6 people watching. I appreciate everybody actually tuning in. Um, it's This is my first ever live stream. I hit the big 300 subscribers. I know for some channels that's not very much, or that's, yeah, like minuscule, but uh, I ran a podcast for 6 years. The Brainstorm podcast we ran for 6 years, and sometimes our podcast downloads numbers were pretty good, but our YouTube channel never made it over 150 subscribers. So 300 subscribers. I've been doing this show for about a year and a half. I'm pretty happy with it. Granted, I push the YouTube a lot more on this than I ever did on the other one. So, and now you can watch the video on Spotify, which is, I guess, neat. If that's the thing you want to do, but not while you're driving. It won't show the video if you're driving. It'll just show a black screen. I figured that out. But yeah, I guess I really appreciate everybody who tuned in. If you want to follow me, if you don't already, you can follow me on the Twitters. I'm at Skeptical Lefty. I might even have a thing that shows it if you just give me 1 sec. There it is, at Skeptical Lefty on the Twitters. You can also go to my Patreon. It's patreon.com/skeptical leftist. I really appreciate anybody who supports me on there. I try to get extra long versions of everything out for patrons only, because yeah, you got to get something for supporting me. And I don't always get it out when I should, but it's a process. Yeah, the schedule has obviously changed for the show the last while too. Is that I've been doing every second week, and then if something happens that week, like now the kids are on holidays, so I'm not going to be able to work on things as much. But because I went back to my old job again, so back in the oil field, the schedule is week on, week off, and the week that I'm working, that's all I can do. It's not like back in the old days when I could actually do some podcast work at my job, but that's all right. Well, I think that's just about an hour. Thank you so much, everybody who came and took a look. Make sure to subscribe or whatever, all the things that you're supposed to do for YouTube channels if you don't already follow it. If you go like my page on Facebook, I don't know, all the things, do the things. Thank you, Some Random Geek, for being here the whole time. Thank you, Utah Outcasts and Joseph Bacon for comments. Yeah, I really appreciate it. And have yourselves a great night, and hopefully I'll have another stream for, I don't know, 500, say. Let's get to 500 in the next couple months, and then I can do this again. Have a great night. Thanks, guys.